In episode 93 of Mobycast, we discussed secrets management for our cloud-native applications. We learned why we need secrets management and some of the possible solutions available to us. Now that we know the theory, it's time to put that knowledge into practice. In this episode of Mobycast, John and Chris finish their two-part series on handling secrets with cloud-native apps. We show you how to easily implement secrets management for a containerized application running on Amazon Elastic Container Service, or ECS. After this episode, you'll be a pro at keeping a secret. Welcome to Mobycast, a show about the techniques and technologies used by the best cloud-native software teams. Each week, your hosts John Christensen and Chris Hickman pick a software concept and dive deep to figure it out.
Welcome, Chris. It's another episode of Mobycast.
Hey, John. It's good to be back.
Hey, good to have you back. All right. So here we are in the middle of a two-parter. We're talking about managing secrets and keeping those things safe and only in the hands of the code that needs it to run. So in this second part, what are we going to talk about, Chris? Well, we're going to talk about, in the second part, we're going to get more into detail of comparing and contrasting the AWS offerings. So I'll say that part. And then you can tell us, what did we talk about last time, Chris?
Sure. Yeah. So last time, we kicked this off with, what is a secrets management solution and why do we need it? So we always, our applications always have a need for access to some sort of sensitive data, usually whether it be like a database connection string or passwords or API keys or trying to communicate with upstream dependencies. So managing our secrets is something that we just need to do, and we want to do it the right way. So we talked about what are some guidelines for how do you do secrets management correctly? And then we kind of walk through like what the options are for doing this. So we first kind of, just for completeness, we kicked off by talking about just a simple method for doing secrets management that's kind of served us well in the past, where it's just basically just using our standard encryption and decryption and just storing those secrets encrypted until we do need them. So and that's just, we walk through a solution doing that with just using KMS and S3. So very, very simple, but also pretty robust, but not having nearly the feature set that we can now get with off-the-shelf solutions that are out there. So kind of talked about the landscape out there with various different secrets management solutions that do exist. And we talked about Vault from HashiCorp, which is a very, very popular, mature platform. It's multi-cloud, it's hybrid. You run it yourself. It's self-hosted. So that gives it some pros and cons. And then we also talked about there's two different systems from AWS. So there's Systems Manager Parameter Store, and there's also AWS Secrets Manager. And so we kind of talked about just broadly, like, what are the capabilities, the features of those three. And then so today now we're going to pick that up and first start off like, okay, well, what's the difference between Parameter Store and Secrets Manager? They sound really similar. And then once we get past that, then we'll talk about, well, how do we actually do this with our application and how do we integrate with these, in particular for our ECS hosted containers.
So at the end of today's episode, if you have some secrets that are improperly managed in code that you're working on, I can imagine what you'll be able to do is you'll be able to go to your boss, say, I have a new solution, and then you can copy paste one line of code out of Mobycast.fm and be the hero of your team, right?
It won't be that straightforward, but believe it or not, I mean, it actually, like, if you do decide to use one of these AWS secrets management solutions, it's not a lot of effort.
Right.
So there's a lot of bang for the buck here, and it may not be one line of code, but it may only be like 3 or 4. Right.
And, I think it's important to also point out that that's a joke because that's kind of not who we are. We're kind of not the copy paste one line of code people. That's not what we believe in terms of development.
Oh, come on, John. Go to Stack Overflow, right?
Just copy paste your way to the top. Yeah. But seriously, like, if it is only 3 or 4 lines of code, into those 3 or 4 lines of code are, multiple hours worth of thought and understanding and foundational knowledge that everybody should have. So sure, a couple lines of code, but let's actually unpack it into lots of conversation and thought.
Or even just getting to that point, right? Where okay, this is the solution. This is best practice. This is the right solution for me. And then now sometimes it's like the implementation ends up being like the easy part, right? Mm-hmm. What really is the hard part is like knowing what your solution should be.
So the implementation might be the easy part, and there's lots to understand. So let's get into it. Let's talk about some of the differences between Systems Manager, Parameter Store, and Secrets Manager. Yeah,
absolutely. So, as we kind of talked about like the landscape, both of these systems, both Parameter Store and Secrets Manager, they allow you to store secrets, and they both support encryption of those secrets, decryption. They integrate with KMS. And so it's one of those things where it's kind of confusing. It's like, well, how do I pick between one or the other, right? Like there's these two separate things that look really similar. Secrets Manager, in its name, obviously it's dedicated purely to secrets. Parameter Store kind of gives it away, saying like, this seems to be a bit more generic. And so parameters in general, and those parameters, some of those could be secrets as well. So let's talk about like, okay, how they are, similar. So they're both managed key value store services, right? Mm-hmm. So you can, have something with a key name and there's a value associated with it. And this is a managed service for storing and retrieving those. Likewise, the keys, they can have prefixes, right? So just like we have prefixes with S3, so that we can kind of have like this pseudo directory structure to things, right? And kind of name spacing. You can do the same thing with both of these, right? So you can have, namespaces for, different environments, right? So like maybe one is for development and one's for staging and one's for production. And then you can go drill down maybe into application and then maybe even like sub-application or something like that, right? So you can have a namespace built up that makes it easy to have some organization around these key value pairs.
I love how we talk about that so technically, because it feels like we can have folders. And then everyone's like, oh yeah, cool, folders. You know what I mean?
Right.
Oh, we can have namespaces and prefixes. It just feels a little geekier.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. Yeah. Well, and at the end of the day, it ends up like, this is the stuff you really kind of have to do, right? If you have more than one environment and more than one application, you're going to quickly find out like, hey, I got to be organized here. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, like before you know it, you're using secrets for your development environment and prod or vice versa, or you're now just nothing's working, right? So you've got to be organized with this stuff.
Right. Well, and like the business side of the company started to figure out that what folders meant. So we've got to make sure that it still feels like we're talking a foreign language when we talk to each other about what we're working on. So we're going to switch to using words like prefixes. That way they will have no idea that we're just implementing folders.
Sure, absolutely. Like, let's just call them partition keys.
Yes.
And be done with it. So as far as the similarities go, so they both, as I said, they both are they do encryption and decryption. They are using, of course, KMS to do that encryption and decryption. And both of these stores allow the values to be referenceable in CloudFormation templates, which is really nice. And not just CloudFormation, but there's a bunch of services that have integration in with these services, so that you can reference values of secrets inside your scripts, templates, and other places as well. So it can vary without any lines of code, right? You can now reach out, have those secrets retrieved, decrypted, and made available to some other application.
Is that reference something just like an ARN and then colon and then the prefix and then the secret name? Like something as easy as that?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, the ARN includes all that information, right? Okay. So the ARN is fully describing, it's basically saying it has, account, region, service, and then the actual name of the key for the secret as well, right? Or the parameter, as it may be. So that ARN is the full thing. And sometimes you don't have to use the full ARN. You can, if depending on the service and depending on whether it's within the same account, you can use the
like a tokenized
alias
ARN.
or the short or just the name of the key, right? So you can keep it really simple. So if your namespace was, /Moby/development/my app, you can just do that instead of the full ARN.
Cool.
Yeah. So let's talk about, so that's how they're similar. So let's talk about some of the key differences between them. So one of the ways they differ is just the types of values that they store. So Systems Manager Parameter Store. So you can store either encrypted or unencrypted plain text data into it, right? So so you have that flexibility. So this is like the kind of the complete solution for all sorts of just parameters, configuration data, just any kind of key value pairs that you want to store. Parameter Store will allow you to do that, and it has multiple different types of values. So you can have a list, you can have strings, you can have list of strings, and then you can have secure strings, which are encrypted. Secrets Manager, on the other hand, the only thing it supports are encrypted values. So, which makes, it's, again, the name kind of gives it away, right? It's a Secrets Manager. So everything you store in Secrets Manager is going to be encrypted.
I guess it's like, okay, this lets you do 3 things and this lets you do 1 thing, but the 1 thing is the same across both of them. So unless I'm nervous that I'm going to forget to store my secrets encrypted, I could forget and accidentally store them unencrypted because Parameter Store will let me do that. That's potentially something to worry about, but otherwise it still feels like there's not a clear winner here. Again,
other than if you want one solution to manage all things and some of that doesn't need to be encrypted, then
there you go. So then
Parameter Store gives you that flexibility, right?
It might be nice to not use 2 different services if you know. Okay, got it.
Yep. So let's talk about cost. So cost is actually one area where these differ dramatically. So with Systems Manager Parameter Store, there is no cost for parameters at the standard tier. And you can have up to 10,000 of these parameters per account, I believe that is, right? So remember this, so Parameter Store,
no matter how often you access them, so you're accessing these parameters just nonstop. They charge by the amount of parameters. So remember, Parameter Store has those 2 tiers, right? The standard and advanced. And so we said with the standard, that is limited to a maximum size of 4K bytes. 4K, yeah. And it is using it's doing the decryption directly with KMS using the CMK, right? So, and that's one of the reasons why it has that 4K limitation. But so if you are using standard tier parameters, again, you can have up to 10,000 of those. There's no cost. It doesn't matter how many times you access them. You will be subject to throttling quotas if you go above it. So KMS has quotas, right, across your account. So you can exceed that, and then you would be throttled. But there's no cost, right, at all for standard tier. Now, advanced tier parameters, they will incur charges. So there is some charging there. But this is a big win for Parameter Store. So basically it's free. As long as your values are 4K or less and you stay at the standard tier, this is free. And you remember to store them encrypted. Yes. But unencrypted secrets cost, they're the same price. They're free as well. Just you may have some other cost, right? In handling a security breach. So Secrets Manager, on the hand, it does cost. And so the cost here is pretty straightforward. 40 cents a secret per month, and looking at 5 cents for every 10,000 API calls. Okay. So, if you have, 100 secrets that you're managing that you have, right? That's $40 a month for just keeping those secrets in Secrets Manager. And then, if you have lots of API calls, then that may add to the cost as well. Yeah. So, but what you do get a lot of additional functionality through Secrets Manager. So it's again, it depends on your use case, what features you can take advantage of that you require. Will kind of help decide which one you'll choose. And so given that, so let's talk about so what are the additional features then that Secrets Manager has that Parameter Store doesn't? So again, Parameter Store is basically pretty straightforward and simple, right? You can have these strings
whether they be encrypted or unencrypted. You can store them, you can retrieve them. That's about it. With the advanced tier, there are some additional features you can have. You can have some policies in place and whatnot. Parameter store does give you version history. You can see like things have changed and whatnot. But that's basically it. Secrets Manager does have quite a few additional features that may suit your use case a lot better, and it may provide a reason why you'd want to use it over parameter store. So one of those is it does support auto rotation of credentials. So this is a really nice feature, especially some of the integrations that it has for services like RDS. So if you have RDS databases, when you create a secret in Secrets Manager, it's going to ask you what type of secret you want to create. One of those types is going to be, this is RDS credentials. And so you basically just give it the username password for the RDS database. That is stored as a secret. You can then define a rotation policy on that. And Secrets Manager will handle everything else for you. So you can say how often you want that rotated. Secrets Manager will be responsible for generating a secure random secret for the password. And you don't have to do anything. So really, pretty nice, complete end-to-end solution there for just making sure that your credentials are rotated with your databases. So it's integrated with RDS, and it's also integrated with DocumentDB and some other databases, Redshift, I believe.
Okay.
So you also, if you have services that are not directly integrated in with Secrets Manager, it does give you a hook to manage your own rotation of keys, and it does this via Lambda functions. And so that's something that they give you templates, and it's pretty straightforward to do. So if you want to have auto rotation of credentials for other types of services, so it could be like upstream services, it could be other microservices in your organization, it could be service as service secrets. We've talked about that in previous episodes of Mobycast. How do you have microservices call each other securely?
Right.
So rotation of those kinds of secrets. I mean, all that would be supported with Secrets Manager if you wanted to do that. And again, a nice integration hook through Lambda.
That is pretty cool. I like it.
It is, especially for RDS, right? RDS, it's kind of one of those no-brainers. It's just so seamless. The only thing you have to do is just deal with making sure whatever's using those secrets is rereading them when they do change, right?
Right. Yes.
Which is kind of like, from a detail standpoint, that's actually kind of, it could be a little tricky, right?
Yep.
To get it done right. So auto rotation of credentials is one of the big value adds that Secrets Manager gives you. Another one is it does do password generation by basically generating random secrets. So it has that capability to generate these random secrets for you. So I don't know about you, John, but like for me, whenever I have to go generate some random secret, it's like, what do I use? And a lot of times I'll just use like something like LastPass, right, to go generate me a nice secure random secret with the kind of criteria I have. Well, Secrets Manager will do that for you as well.
Right. I just copy paste code off of Stack Overflow and run it.
There you go. Yeah. Or just use password, right? Like that always works. Right. If you want to be really tricky, maybe admin123. Like, yeah. So no, you don't have to do that anymore with Secrets Manager. So with Secrets Manager, it'll do that for you.
Cool.
And then also secrets can now be shared across accounts with Secrets Manager as well. So it kind of gives you some cross account capabilities there as well. So those are the key differences. I think, for me...
I want to comment on the cross-account thing because I just think it's sort of funny, like just a sort of side note that, best practices, separate all of your environments by having separate accounts for each one of them. And like best practices, give every developer their own AWS account. And then as soon as everybody started doing that, like all these features to be able to move data around and move it across accounts started coming into play. And it's like, you guys are, AWS, you're totally going to ruin this nice fence that you built between accounts eventually here. Just a side sort of unrelated to this whole conversation thought. that I've been having lately. Like more and more features coming around that make it easier and easier to blur the lines between accounts. Wait a minute. The whole point was to have those lines be pretty strict.
They are. This is kind of a security feature, right? Because like you imagine you set up an account that is a very secured account with few people that have access to it, really locked down, and that's where you keep all your credentials. And so you only have a few people that can use that account to enter credentials, but then those credentials need to be retrieved by other folks that are separated, isolated in other accounts. So I think it's kind of similar to like have an account purely for logging, where all your logs go to a single account. This is kind of like similar, where it's like you have an account where this is where all secrets are managed, and other people can basically subscribe to them and retrieve them, but the actual management of them is done by this one account. And so that might be one of the use cases here for Secrets Manager and having that cross account capability.
Okay, that makes sense, but I still want you to let me win this.
There's no doubt, right? Like the permutations that you can have with number of like regions, accounts, roles, users, policies, VPCs, endpoints, like everything else that goes on. I mean, it's super complicated. AWS organizations, you can use that and set that up. I mean, it can get really, really complicated very, very quickly. And there is so much variation here, and there's so many different permutations that, it's pretty quickly you can be up to your neck in just like configuration hell. Right? Yes,
but the other thing I'm saying is true. Like I saw some new cross-account EBS features to make it easier to share data from an EBS drive across accounts. I saw new cross-account features around VPC communication. I saw new cross-account features around S3. And it's like, these are breaking down the barriers that people put up on purpose and then didn't like. It's just kind of funny. It's funny to me that it's the forever trade-off between security and ease of use.
Yeah. And it's the practical solution is somewhere in between.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Is really what it is. And so it's like trying to find that right mix, and it depends, right, on different users. So big companies, like their inflection point is going to be different than startup companies or, small businesses. And so being able to try to support all of that ends up becoming, it just adds to the complication.
Right. And, one of the best, this is a real big tangent. We'll come back to ECS ECS secrets management in just a second. But one of the best things I've seen around cross account, why to have many accounts for your different environments, for example, or different developers is because it's really, account limits are done AWS service limits are done at the account level. So you can only have a certain amount of VPCs, or you can only spin up a certain number of load balancers, that kind of stuff. And it's easy for some developer to accidentally write a script that spins up the wrong number of something or too many of something. And by doing that, they've suddenly prevented production from being able to auto scale as needed. And then that could hamper, production, right? That would be terrible. And that is a very, very good reason to do multiple accounts. But I can so imagine a new feature coming out, like introducing AWS service limits across organizations, or introducing a way to share AWS service limits across accounts. So now that you can like give some other account the unused services that this one account, can't you imagine that?
Yes. Service limit bursting, burstability, right?
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Anyway, we got to go back to it, but yeah, it's like those barriers are weird and fuzzy. We cover a lot of information here on Mobycast, and if you've ever wanted to go back and remind yourself of something we talked about in a previous episode, it can be hard to search through our website and transcripts to find exactly what you're looking for. Well, now it's a lot easier. All you have to do is go to mobycast.fm/show-notes and sign up. We'll send you our weekly, super detailed outline that we use to actually record the show. A lot of times, this outline contains more information than we get to during our hour on the air. So sign up and get weekly Mobycast cheat sheets to all of our episodes delivered right to your inbox. Okay, ECS integration of secrets.
Yeah. Okay. So we've talked about like the various different services that we can use. I think like for me, the way I'm wrapping my head around this is that I really like Secrets Manager for database credentials, and so I think that totally makes a lot of sense. Mm-hmm. And then for kind of like application specific sensitive data. So things like API keys or maybe some upstream services, credentials for upstream services. I think I like Parameter Store for that, just for its simplicity. So just something to keep in mind. Parameter Store does provide some integration with Secrets Manager, so I believe you can go through Parameter Store to access Secrets Manager. So you can have like the one way of doing it in your code. So something to consider as well. So let's talk about how do you actually use this with like a containerized application that's running on ECS. So as we talked about, there's pretty strong integration with these services with other AWS services like CloudFormation. So ECS is one of those as well. And it kind of works the same way, regardless of whether you choose Secrets Manager or Systems Manager Parameter Store. So let's kind of walk through that. This does apply to both types of launch types with ECS, so both EC2 and Fargate. And the way it works is...
And I imagine this probably works the same way for ECS and EKS, although we haven't really played with EKS that much.
EKS might be a little bit different. It's definitely going to be different. And I'm not sure exactly what the integration story is there. It'll be clear once we kind of get into this on how it's implemented.
I see, because we're going to talk about tasks, which is obviously not something that EKS even has. Okay,
yeah,
cool.
Yeah, right. So the way this works with ECS is at the end of the day, you're going to be injecting that sensitive data into your containers as environment variables. So we kind of talked about this last time about environment variables being one of those common ways for having secrets available to your containerized application. And again, for the most part, that is a very secure way to do it. There is a small chance of leakage, but someone would have to be able to have root access in order to see that and to get access to that. So the way you do this is you're going to be specifying parameters in the task definition file for your task, for your containers, as name value pairs. And so it's going to go in a very specific area in your task definition file. And it's kind of maybe a little unfortunate, or just kind of just something you need to be aware of, that there's actually two areas of your task definition file that you can have secrets. One is for the application itself, for your containers. And for that, you're going to use the secrets parameter. So that's the actual name of the parameter is called secrets. If you need to access secrets in your logging configuration, then that parameter is called secret options. Not sure why they have to be different names, and the disparity, the being so asymmetric. But it is what it is. So for the most part, people, I think, your secrets are going to be on your container basis. So you probably just be using that secrets parameter. But if you do have a logging configuration where you do need secrets because of the integration you're using for whatever log provider you have, then you'd be referenced into it as the secret options parameter. So just something to keep in mind. And so what you do to define these, right, is so inside that task definition file, you go to this secrets key in the JSON, and then for that you now have an array of secrets specified as objects. And so for each object, it's just a key value pair. The key, it's going to have a name and then a value. Sorry. So the name is going to be that's basically specifying the environment variable name that'll be exposed to the container. And then the value, that's going to be the ARN of the secret that you want to reference. And so that ARN can either be referenced in a systems manager parameter store secret, or an AWS secrets manager value, right?
Makes sense. So you're defining it there, and then once your code is running, then you can just refer to the environment variable, the names of the secrets as environment variable names, right?
Right.
Like,
yeah. So just, I mean, it'll just be an environment variable that's now available to your application running inside that container. So you can use whatever stack specific ways of doing it. So if you're using Node, right, it's the process env object to go and access that. So whatever you use for the name of it, right, it's like maybe it's called my secret, right? So you process.env.mysecret, and now you have access to that inside your application.
Well, that's pretty cool. I imagine this has changed by now, but earlier this year when I was doing stuff with Secrets Manager with Lambda, I actually had to go make Secrets Manager API calls from Lambda to go get my secret by name and then make it available to the rest of the Lambda functions. So I wrote a little code to go do that. And this is like way easier than that.
Right. And so you probably still have to do that with Lambda. But so this is a nice integration point for ECS, right? It just makes it really, really easy to do, right? No code. You're just updating the task definition file, and you're choosing like, hey, what's the environment variable name? And then here's the ARN for my secret.
I'm guessing that in EKS, it's probably similar, but just with the whole concept of pods instead of task definitions.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, it would be kind of a no-brainer there.
Yep.
Yep. So something to keep in mind. So obviously this data is going to be injected when the container is started, right? So
right. If you want a different secret value, you've got to restart your container.
Exactly, right? So any subsequent updates to that sensitive data after the container started, such as like credential rotation, your container is not going to see that, right? It's not going to change. So you're going to have to recreate that container. It's going to have to just restart it, right? So quit that one and spin up a new one because it's only going to read it when they're on a init. So one thing you can do is you can use if you're using ECS with the service. So if you actually have a service defined, right, you can then just go and update your service. You don't have to change anything. You can just click the force new deployment option. And then that will cause ECS basically just to terminate the existing task and spin up new ones with the same task definition file, which doesn't change, right? It's because it's the value has changed inside Secrets Manager or inside Parameter Store.
I'm imagining making a little thing that whenever you update a secret, it would send like a little notification that then would do that, right? Like just sort of an auto magic. Oh, you changed the secret? Go blast all the containers away and make new ones. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you could do that.
It's really pretty straightforward, right? So it's like, again, like if you're doing it as an ECS service, it's literally just making an API call to say update service with force new deployment.
Right. I was thinking though, whether you could do it with no code. Like, I don't know if you can have a alert, sort of like a CloudWatch alert get fired when a secret gets changed. But if you could, and then you could, you'd probably need to write a Lambda at the very least. A Lambda that would go tell that service to restart.
Mm-hmm. I wouldn't be surprised if you could do all that with no code using Event Bridge. Leave that as an exercise for the reader, or maybe
a little extra credit. Let us know if you figure out how to do that.
Yeah.
Let us know. That'd be cool. I'd like to read that.
Yeah. So guess what? We're not done. So if we just did that, it wouldn't work, right? So, because what we're missing? Our good old friend IAM, permissions and roles and policies. Right. Because otherwise this is a big gaping security hole, right? If you could just, any ECS task is able to go read secrets.
Yes.
Like that's not good. Right. So there's some things that we have to do from a security posture in order to make this happen. And
I can read, but I remember that we were doing roles by task instead of roles by the EC2 instance that runs all of our containers, because roles by task helps us have different tasks with different roles and different capabilities. So one task might need secrets, another might not. One task might need to put stuff in S3, another task might not. So we'll do a task execution role to to give it access to the secrets manager and to the particular secret within the secrets manager, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is one of those ones too, where it may help go back to episode 86, when we were talking about serverless containers with Fargate, where we really went into detail on the various roles used by ECS. And so there's two roles to keep in mind here. One is there's task-based IAM roles. And so that is the IAM role that's used by your application when your application makes calls to AWS services. And so that we definitely recommend, like, hey, instead of using the default instance role, right, and basically doing it at the host level, do your permissions at the container level using a task-based IAM role. The other role is this task execution role, which kind of sounds like the same. Yes,
I just confused it, right? I just totally mixed it up. Yep.
But it is. It's really is kind of confusing with all these names. But the task
right, and we put out an AWS wishlist item to rename this to task management role. Mm-hmm. That would be so much clearer. Mm-hmm. Okay. I'm just like, just name things in a way that makes it so that, like somebody reading it can be like, oh, that must do this. And if I read task execution role, it's like, oh, that must be the role that is, used when the task is executing. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I'm just bummed by that poor choice.
Right. Yes. So, but that's what we're here for, right? Is to help clear that up and to point that stuff out.
I was involved in the making of episode 86.
You get a C- on the quiz.
Anyway, and I think I complained about it then too. So I'll never ever remember this.
Yes. And that's okay. So task execution role. So that is the role that's used by the ECS agent to make AWS API calls on your behalf, right? So we use that back for Fargate because we needed that in order for the Fargate test to be able to pull a container image from ECR. And then now we need it so that our container the agent can go make these calls to either Secrets Manager or Parameter Store on our behalf and create those environment variables and inject them into our container, right? Which is not that is not done by our actual application, right? It's outside of our application, right? So that's why it's a separate role. Mm-hmm. So we need to set up our task execution role. So one, we have to make sure if our task definition is not specifying a task execution role, we're going to need to do that, right? So to pick a role to be used for this particular purpose. And so if we go in and we try to update our task definition file, right, to add these secrets into it, if we don't specify the task execution role in that, you're going to get an error inside, even in the console, which is nice, right? Mm-hmm. Like it was actually kind of a pleasant surprise because I could have seen like instead this working like, oh, I just made my update. I added secrets section to it. Now I go and update my service with this new task definition file. And then it's just like maybe just something just doesn't work, right? Yeah. And it kind of like silently fails. So at least there's some validation there to let you know, hey, you're missing something.
Yeah, like the classic would be like undefined environment variable, right? Like, why isn't this environment variable defined?
Why isn't it working? Exactly. Yeah. So we'll have to specify the task execution role inside the task definition itself when we specify the secrets. And then in addition to that, we're going to have to make sure that that role has access to the required APIs that it's going to need in order to do this. So if you're using Systems Manager Parameter Store, then you're going to you want to make sure that it has the SSM get parameters action is one of the operations that it can do. And then if you're using Secrets Manager, then it's going to be Secrets Manager get secret value is going to be the action. So you want to put that as part of you add that to a policy, IAM policy, and attach it to that role, the task execution role, so that it has access to Secrets Manager or SSM. And then, a best practice would obviously be to further lock that down and specify resources that it can do this on.
Right.
The actual ARNs for like the secrets, if it makes sense, if it's a limited scope or a handful, then it makes sense to go ahead and lock it down there.
You mentioned just now 2 specific policies that you need to add to the role, and they are not in the show notes that are going to be on the web page, which I know probably already the mid-roll went where I'm like, hey, get our show notes, have them sent to your email. But let's talk about that more specifically. Those are probably handy. Like knowing that and being able to refer back to that would be nice. If you're listening to this and your memory is anything like mine is, it'd be nice to be able to go and see one place where it's like, oh, what was the detail of what he said there without having to go back and listen again. So that's an example of the detail that's in the show notes that come to your email versus the detail that's on our webpage. So little plug for that. Yeah.
And you'll find out pretty quickly, like this is a problem, right? So like, cause if you don't have these permissions applied to that task execution role, then you'll be able to update your task definition file. You'll be able to update your service and roll out, spin up your containers where they're going to go out and try to fetch these secrets. And actually what will happen is that your container will be stopped. It'll actually fail. And you're going to get if you then go in and see what the results are and like why it stopped, you'll see like an error message that says something like, the stopped reason was fetching secret data from Secrets Manager, access denied exception to the user, which is kind of interesting to see because the user is going to show you it's an assumed role using STS from the task execution role. And then it's just going to say it's not authorized to perform get secret value on this particular resource. So you'll find out really quickly, right? That you're missing this.
That's interesting that it just shuts down your container. That is,
it does, yeah. So it will fail to spin up because of this. So it's pretty much it is a very hard fail, right? It's not a silent, soft fail. It is a in your face. You are now broken type thing. So very important to update your task execution role. To have that capability.
Well, super cool. We did it. We talked about secrets.
We did. And hopefully, I mean, for your containerized applications on ECS, managing your secrets now using either Secrets Manager or Parameter Store, it is just really pretty easy. Like once you get over these, like, okay, you gotta make sure that you have the right roles and policies attached to them. But after that, it's really just, you can have someone that's have some way of responsibly creating these secrets inside one of those systems. But then after that, just fetching that information is just so simple. It's just updating your task definition file.
Right. And the 2 hard parts that remain are still like rotating secrets for anything outside of RDS or the other integrated services. Like that could be a little tricky still. And then reacting to secrets that changed. If you are rotating those secrets, like dealing with that in the rest of your code. That could be a little tricky still.
Yeah. The good news there is a new service with Systems Manager that basically deals with that. Like how do you if you do have updates, how do you notify other subscribers that is using that information, and how do they get notified? So there is a really very, very new service that AWS just recently announced, and that is it's called AWS App Config, and this is a new capability of Systems Manager. So definitely something to look into there as well.
Awesome! Sounds like everybody's going to stay employed if they just keep using AWS stuff.
Yeah. And I mean, it's a natural extent, right? We could just talk about like, oh, these are the hard parts, right? So, I mean, it totally makes sense. Like,
right. Yeah. Whenever there's hard parts
for everyone, right? Yeah. So it's funny because we, for one of our clients, we actually built this, right? Because we had the same problem, right? So we basically had to we built this configuration service, right? So that we could make updates. It could be managed centrally. And then when updates were made, notifications went out to all subscribing applications that they could then reload that information.
Yes. That's that's a common problem.
Yeah. So now we can fold that down and use something like app config instead.
Super cool.
Yes.
All right. Well, thanks so much, Chris. I got to run. I got things to do. So do you, listener.
Thanks, John. All right.
I'll talk to you next week.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for being aboard with us on this week's episode of Mobycast. Also, thanks to our producer, Roy England. And I'm our announcer, Stevie Rose. Come talk to us on mobycast.fm or on Reddit at r/Mobycast.